to unpack what I just said for people, two different sort of modes that we often see in nature for reproductive strategies are what you might call more of the salmon mode. Let me just have as many babies as possible, but not invest so much time and effort into caring for them. And then the opposite, which is what we think of as human mode, basically. Let's invest a lot of time and effort in a relatively small number of offspring. What you're basically saying here is that within one species, within mice, the mothers themselves can exhibit these different behavioral strategies. One will spend a lot of time grooming and tending to her pups, but she won't go out and have as much sexual activity to produce more litters. And then another type of female will basically have the opposite pattern.
Yes, that's the interpretation of that work. Absolutely. One interpretation of that work. Yes.
So different behavioral strategies tied to the way that individuals were cared for by their mother. The pattern of licking, how much time she was there, which itself is going to be due to the hormonal soup of changes that happen tied to all the stressors in the environment and all of that stuff. So this stuff all connects and it can feed forward to the next generation and propagate in an experience dependent way. One thing I want to ask you about here is the effects of maternal age itself. Has anyone looked at how, on average, maternal care behavior varies between a mother's first litter and last litter, or if she has a litter right when she becomes sexually mature versus it's delayed and she starts later in life?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I can't think of any studies off the top of my head that have looked at the latter part of your question. So just sort of thinking about maternal care right after sexual maturity versus a total delay and the first litter being later. There are, of course, many studies that look at maternal care across litters in which you're sort of looking at the combination of experience but age.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I'm not sure.
Got it. So perhaps no one's done that type of experiment. But I want to talk a little bit more now about the pup side of this and the developmental effects of different patterns of maternal care behavior. So we started to get at this a little bit, but can you start to give us kind of a broad survey of what do the pups tend to look like during the time that they're pups, but also when they grow up and they mature, from litters where you have normal, adequate maternal care behavior versus maybe a more neglectful mother, not necessarily one who's, starving and has killed her pups, but one who's just licking less, not around as much, etc. What effect does that tend to have on the pups?
Yeah, great question. So this has been investigated in many different models, some separating mom from infants to produce this reduction in maternal care, others like the grooming work that I discussed, where you look at natural variations in grooming behavior, or even there are studies in which certain laboratory conditions can push mice towards low or higher grooming. When you look at the offspring, I think the first thing that I've already discussed a little bit that to me is the most notable is that you see the transmission of the experience. So when you look at social behavior, particularly maternal care, females that were raised in a low grooming environment will also spend less time grooming their own offspring, and vice versa. Raised in a high grooming environment will spend more time.